Look at that. That's Willie's game. If you don't keep him right in front of you, he winds up putting lumps on the back of your head. He's been that way since he was a kid. He used to take on the big guys around Hartford, run into a doorway, and then when they try to follow him, he'd slam the door right in their faces. He's been a cutie since he was 7.
As a kid, he made a couple of bucks using his quick little feet working as a lookout at the local crap game. He was Guglielmo Papaleo. He was better known to boxing fans as Will-O-the-Wisp, considered one of the greatest boxers of all times. He got his start in Hartford, Connecticut. It all began in 1922, when Willie was born into a working-class Italian-American home in Middletown, Connecticut. Later, as a young shoeshine boy in Hartford, Guglielmo had to put up his dukes to protect his lucrative corner. Things were pretty rough for the young Papaleo, who sometimes came home with a shiner of his own. So he took up the fight game at the local gym and became an amateur at 15 years of age. Willie, as he was then called, was so quick, an observer suggested,
you couldn't hit him in the ass with a handful of rice.
Willie was no palooka. In 65 amateur fights, Willie won all but 3. His most memorable was his loss against a then-unknown Sugar Ray Robinson.
I weighed 105 pounds. He weighed about 130. But I had a manager who was the bravest guy in the world. He didn't care who I fought, the son of a bitch. But I didn't get hurt. He beat me, Ray, of course. He was tall, and he was a good fighter.
With his new name, Willie Pep, the only thing left for the fleet-footed Connecticut State Amateur Champion was to go pro. How much did you make in your first fights?
Oh, I don't know. I think about $8, $7.
Not a whole hell of a lot.
And then my manager took half, so he gave me $4, I think. I remember.
In an age of great featherweights, Pep won 54 fights in a row before his title shot. At 20 years old, he became the first undefeated fighter to win a title.
I fought the hardest puncher the featherweight division ever had, Chalky Wright. He knocked everybody out, but he never hit me, so he didn't knock me out. I won the fight 15 rounds, and that's a lot of rounds, 15 rounds, for a guy that's dynamite. Every time he hits you, he shook a little bit, Chalky Wright. I fought him 2 or 3 times, and finally I knocked him out, and he never fought me anymore.
The Connecticut native would win 62 in a row, and then 73 straight. Willie humbly credited his manager for his great record, jokingly saying, he went to the cemetery and dug them out so I could fight. The truth, however, is that Pep was Fighter of the Year in 1945. He fought in the first ever televised fight from Madison Square Garden in his title defense rematch against Chalky Wright. Incredibly, Pep would hold the featherweight title from 1942 until 1950. Throughout his career, the Nutmegger was a real class act.
Willie is pulling out all the stops here in round 6. He's appealing to the referee to stop the fight. And there's the end of the round.
Pep's incredible boxing career was matched only by his unusual stint in the armed forces. After a couple of years in the Navy, he was discharged because of a punctured eardrum.
All of a sudden I get greetings from the Army again. So I went down there and I said, you know, I was in the Navy before. Why can't I go in the Navy now? They said, Navy don't want you. They put me in the Army.
After finally being discharged, it was Pep's work ethic that made his return to the fight game possible.
Well, you got to follow the rules of the game. If you got to train, you got to train. That's all. And I think the training did me a lot of good because I was always in shape. A man in shape beats a man out of shape. So I did very well.
Then there was that fight in Minneapolis. Reporters were ribbing Pep about the great southpaw Jackie Graves. Pep said, forget about him. I can fight him. I'll go a whole round without even throwing a punch. Well, in the third, he did just that. And would you believe it? It was so masterful, the judges gave him the round. 6 months after his famous Minneapolis accomplishment, Pep found himself in a fight for his life. While flying back from Florida, the small passenger plane he was on crash-landed in a small New Jersey town.
And I remember I was in the rubbish, and the guy tapped me on the back. He said, hey kid, can you move? My back was killing me. You know, I broke 2 vertebrae in my back.
Unbelievably, in what is called one of the greatest comebacks from an injury, Pep would be fighting again in just 5 months. Pep fought another 131 bouts in the next 19 years. Among the most memorable are Pep's fights with Sandy Sadler, who beat him in their first championship brawl.
Well, geez, he was just close to 6 feet. He was tall and skinny, and I could never find him. He was so skinny, but he was tough. And I beat him once 15 rounds, but he was tough.
In 1949, in what many call one of the greatest boxing matches of all time, Pep won his title back from Sadler in a brilliant effort.
This isn't exactly a grudge fight, but there's not much love lost between these two men.
In the next 2 fights, Sadler would win 2 of the most brutal bouts of the featherweight class.
Sadler held and hit with his left. He hurt Pep, but Willie's going to get up. That's right, take the 8 count, Willie, and don't let this guy grab you again. This fight is starting to get out of hand.
Pep says he and Sadler were both colorful people. They bled all over the place.
I've never seen anything like this fight in my life, not even in the streets.
Late in his career, Pep won 60 of 66 fights. Perennial Pep would etch his name in history.
Frank, I had a strong brain. Brain said, don't get hit, and I tried not to get hit.
In 1963, Pep was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and 2 years later became the first boxer to resume fighting after induction. His career would end with 230 wins, more than Gentleman Jim Corbett, Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Rocky Marciano, and Muhammad Ali put together. Recently rated as one of the 5 greatest boxers of the century, he'll always be remembered by his fans and friends for his artistry, vision, and phenomenal speed.
I don't think a fighter with those skills and that expertise in the ring, I know will not be around and will not come along in my lifetime.
Mine either.
And I don't think it'll come along in the next 50 years.
So, who does Pep call his most tenacious opponent?
My 3rd ex-wife. She was the toughest competitor I ever had.
Today, Willie says he's the luckiest guy in the world. He has a TV and a wife, and they both work. But Willie's had some trouble with the dames. You see, he's been married 5 times before. He says they were all great housekeepers. They each kept the house. Willie only made $1.3 million through 241 fights. Unfortunately, he says he spent $1.4 million. Willie also left a lot at the track. It's too bad his horses weren't as fast as he was. After retirement from boxing, Pep worked various jobs for the state of Connecticut. He served as a boxing inspector and a tax collector. Imagine Willie Pep showing up at your door asking for your back taxes. Pep, however, was too soft for the job, preferring to be remembered for his record as the greatest winner in boxing history, a feat he humbly admits was pretty good.
I did well.